I don't know about you, but I get really excited in a special way when the Olympics come around. I feel like the Games bring us all together like not a lot of other things can. We all want Team USA to bring home the gold, and we cheer for the athletes because they're our athletes. I get a little emotional just thinking about it. So, with the Paris Olympics getting started today, I'm pleased to bring you a very Olympics-themed edition of Story of the Day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Kenny Drugs, now offering a new mobile app to help patients better manage prescriptions for themselves and their family. More at kennydrugs.com. And Clarkson University, offering over 95 programs of study with campuses in the Hudson Valley, Central, and Northern New York. More at clarkson.edu.
Hi, I'm Kara Chapman. It's Friday, July 26th. Up first, more than 10,000 Olympic athletes are representing over 200 countries in Paris. One of those athletes is from right here in the North Country. NCPR intern Zach Jaworski has more.
Jimmer Fredette of Glens Falls will represent the United States at the 2024 Olympics. The 35-year-old former NBA and college standout will be hooping for the national 3-on-3 basketball team.
It's kind of like playing outside. Just like when you're younger, you can be a little bit more physical.
When most people think of Olympic basketball, they think of the traditional 5-on-5 version of the sport. But for the second time ever, there's going to be 3-on-3 basketball at the Games. Fredette says he had to adapt to this different style of basketball.
It's a different sport, very fast-paced, half-court, continuous play, different type of conditioning. It took me about 6 months before I felt really comfortable on the court, where I felt like, okay, I feel like I'm playing 3x3 basketball now.
While Fredette's playing in Paris, there's also plenty of Olympic-themed activities happening in the North Country's very own Olympic Village. Lake Placid is hosting live streamings of the 2024 Games at various former Olympic venues across town. There are also educational sessions about the Olympic movement, plus inline skating. The 2024 Olympic Games last through August 11th. For North Country Public Radio, I'm Zach Jaworski.
Audio from Jimmer Fredette came courtesy of NPR's Brian Mann. Today, we're celebrating the start of the Summer Olympics in Paris. But some athletes from New York and around the world are already looking to the next Summer Games. After more than a century, the International Olympic Committee is adding lacrosse back to the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. And when that happens, the Haudenosaunee Nationals Lacrosse Team wants to be there, playing under its own flag. Ava Pukach with the New York Public News Network reports.
The Haudenosaunee Nationals have the support of both U.S. and Canadian leaders to compete under their own flag in 4 years. President Joe Biden voiced his support for the Haudenosaunee team's request last year.
Their ancestors invented the game. They perfected it for millennia. Their circumstances are unique, and they should be granted an exception to field their own team at the Olympics.
Leo Nolan, executive director of the Haudenosaunee Nationals Lacrosse Team, hopes the team will make it to LA, not just because of the Haudenosaunee ties to the origins of the game, but also because the team already competes under its own flag in other lacrosse competitions worldwide, placing third in the 2023 World Lacrosse Championship.
The Olympics showcase the best athletes in a sport. I mean, that's what the Olympics are about. And being third in the world, both in our men and our U20 boys and our women are eighth in the world, you would expect that you would want, because we have some of the best athletes, best lacrosse players in the world, and you would want to make sure that they were included in some way, shape, or form.
The International Olympic Committee, or IOC, says only countries with a National Olympic Committee are eligible to participate, saying it's up to the U.S. and Canadian Olympic committees to allow for Haudenosaunee players to compete on their respective teams. In short, Olympians have to represent a nation. Matthew Andrews, a professor at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill who studies sports and American history, says the definition of what constitutes a nation is a little murky.
Puerto Rico's not a nation at the UN, but they compete as a nation. Makes you wonder why the Haudenosaunee can't compete as a nation. Palestine competes at the Olympics, though they're just an observer state at the United Nations. Hong Kong competes at the Olympics as an independent nation. American Samoa competes at the Olympics as an independent nation, but they're not UN recognized nations. It all just depends on what the IOC wants to do and who they want to give nation status to.
Andrews says there is a bit of a slippery slope in how the IOC gives out nation status. He notes Native Hawaiians petitioned to compete in the Olympic surfing contest, not as Americans, but as Hawaiians.
So if they let the Haudenosaunee compete in lacrosse, the Hawaiians are going to raise their hand and say, well, why don't we get to compete in surfing? We're some of the best surfers in the world. We invented the sport. Hawaii has been colonized by the United States. What's the difference? That's where it gets tricky. Where do you draw the line?
Andrews says he personally doesn't see an upside of telling the Haudenosaunee they can't compete, saying it's an obvious feel-good story for the Games, especially as it can help counteract bad press that comes out of the Olympics. The Haudenosaunee Nationals often serve as ambassadors of lacrosse in international competitions, and Nolan says the team will continue to explore pathways for inclusion in the sport's first Olympic contest since 1908.
I think it would be great for the originators of the game to be there and call out, these important parts of the game that are important to all of us, not just Indian people, not just Haudenosaunee, but all of us. With 90 countries now playing, it's a growing sport, and people are really enjoying the competition and the level of what it brings to the sports world.
In Syracuse, I'm Eva Pugat for the New York Public News Network.
Salt Lake City was officially awarded the 2034 Winter Olympics on Wednesday. The new head of USA Luge in Lake Placid is excited the Games will be returning to the U.S. Scott Rewald replaced former USA Luge CEO Jim Leahy in June. Pat Bradley reports for the New York Public News Network.
The French Alps will host the 2030 Olympics, with Salt Lake City getting another shot 4 years later. Rewald says with Utah hosting an upcoming Games, it strengthens potential collaborations.
Lake Placid is the home of USA Luge, and with the announcement, there's nothing that's changed kind of that perspective. If anything, it's exciting, and it opens up kind of opportunities for us as well as other winter sports to expand the level of training, the opportunities that are available to both the sport and the athletes who are competing in it.
Rewald is familiar with the sliding tracks in Lake Placid and Utah and says athletes will benefit from training on both.
The tracks offer different profiles, require different elements in terms of the athletes and what it takes to succeed. So I actually think it's great to have kind of the diversity that the two tracks bring, because they're both needed in order to be able to help our athletes develop. And actually, I see as complementing each other.
Lake Placid has put in a bid to be the backup sliding facility for the 2026 Winter Olympics, in case the organizers of the Milan Cortina Games fail to complete construction and certification of a track. Italian organizers say it will be ready. Innsbruck, Austria, and St. Moritz, Switzerland are also being considered as backup locations.
That was Pat Bradley reporting. More news all the time at ncpr.org. Music today by Alan Dunham of South Glens Falls and Saranac Project of Saranac Lake. I'm Kara Chapman, North Country Public Radio.